Hey, what's up, guys? Another episode of Eastern Current. Did you like that? Did you like that camera work
I
there?
like the camera work, though, on a tripod.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. Just whatever. It doesn't matter. It's the nerd. How are you guys doing? Hope everybody's doing all right. Hope we got a few people on here. We got about 6 people on. Make sure you share this with all your friends. There we go. We got some people jumping on. We'll banter a little bit. I mean, it's so cold out. People are probably just rushing home to get on Facebook.
Fire in your fireplace. Yeah. Hop on Facebook and check it out.
We thought about doing that. We thought about, yo, what's up, Sydney? Good to see you. This is, oh, what up is Sammy? Let's get it.
Oh, nice.
I'm not really sure if it's Sammy or Sydney, but whatever. So, yeah, hope you guys are doing well. This is episode 22. We're going to be talking about Texas redfish. We got a couple guests on tonight. We got Caleb McCumber, who is a captain down in Texas and does a lot of trout fishing, actually, now that we've done a little pre-show conversation, and does a lot of red fishing as well. So we're going to talk about that. And then we have another guest on that jumped on with us, also on Skype, Taylor Roth. So he's jumping on, and we're going to talk to these guys about fishing in Texas, what that looks like. And yeah, man, pretty good. But dude, you've been doing a lot of trout fishing lately, Judd. So tell me about it.
I have been all kinds of trout. It was fishing was real good about a week ago, and then I left. I've been traveling for a week. I went up to Michigan actually and fished. We did a show last week from up there.
Yeah, some steelhead.
Did some steelhead fish and some steelhead trout. That was my first time.
Totally jealous.
Yeah, it was
I'm just gonna punch you in the face right now.
Awesome.
I'm so mad.
But yeah, that was a good time, and came back and had a few trips here, and then went back up to Asheville this weekend, and then today was my first day back on the water in a few days, but it was good fishing some new stuff for this year, and the fish were there, and it was productive. It was a fun time. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little tough the next couple of days with this cold weather that the whole country's seeing. But they were chewing really hard before this front rolled in today. It was fun.
Dude, this morning it was 74 when I went into the office, and then when I walked out of the office it was like 54.
It's crazy.
And then it was
you could have worn shorts and a t-shirt.
I think it was like 44 when I get out of the car here. So we'll see. It's probably gonna keep dipping.
Yeah, it's gonna get cold. I think 30 is the high tomorrow.
Yeah, sweet. Well, hey guys, if you're watching, make sure you like, share, comment, whatever. We're going to be giving away one of these fish prints here. Actually, this very fish print.
That exact one.
By VB Fish Prints. Go follow them on Instagram for all the fish print action. Pretty sick
so I
stuff
think what
on
she's
there.
doing is like you can get your fish to her, and she will paint it up and do that print.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like almost like a mount, but in a print form. It's pretty cool.
Wait. So she's like dipping the fish in the ink and then
she'll like paint, I think the way you do it, you paint the ink onto the fish, and then you can kind of you got to roll it like real smooth on the paper, and you get the scales and you get everything out of it. And like the albacore on here, you can't really see the scales, but obviously they don't really have scales much. But it's
pretty
super
sick.
Cool. She's done some really cool
stuff.
stuff.
That's cool. I think that's my wife was an art teacher for 1 year, and so that was I can't remember the type of ink or printing that is, but it's like it has a particular name.
Yeah, I think it's an Asian art.
Yeah,
style.
Something like that.
But yeah, so tomorrow she's gonna be at Waterline Brewing. The reason they're doing this giveaway is she's gonna be at Waterline Brewing here in Wilmington tomorrow, doing like a little art show, free wine and booze, and they're gonna do a little some free raffles there as well. So go check it out at Waterline Brewing. It's from 6 to 8 tomorrow in downtown Wilmington.
And take your fish and just hand it to her and be like,
bring all your raw fish and just drop them on the table there.
That's awesome, man. That's pretty sick, dude. That's pretty cool that she'll take your fish and do it. I didn't know that.
Definitely,
that was a surprise. I thought that was something that she was like painting or doing. I was like, dang, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's cool. But if you can do it with your own fish, I think that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, man, we'll jump right into our sponsors here. Judd and I haven't been on the show, and last week it feels like forever, though.
It's been a little while.
Since last month, but it was literally just 1 week. But 1 week away is like a eternity away.
It is.
So getting back in the groove here, so pretty good. But let's go ahead and jump into our sponsor shout-outs. I want to give iStrike a big thank you. Those guys support our show like crazy, so get on their website, use the discount code EasternCurrent10, all caps 10, to go on there and save an additional 10%, which there's several ways to sell.
I forgot.
Did you miss
the
that
pressure last week? I was like, and we have we've got a discount code, and I just jumped onto the next thing because I forgot what it was.
Go check out Cito, really good friends of ours here in town, the Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach area. Cito, go call Scott. Cito Scott is what I call him. My wife said, "Do you really call him that?" I'm like, "Yeah, call him," and he answers. I'm like, "What's up, Cito Scott?" Like his first name is Cito in my mind. So we got AFCO and Marshware. Appreciate that partnership.
They're in town. I think we might try to fish tomorrow if we get some weather.
Dude, I hope you get to. We're supposed to be blowing 40?
It's supposed to be blowing like 40, but maybe tomorrow afternoon we'll get a little window.
Yeah, well, hopefully so. So, speaking of booking trips, go to Eastern Angling. Go to Judd Brock Fishing on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Find him, book a trip. Tearing up the trout. He's not going to tell you, but I will tell you, it was lighting in on the trout today.
It was
lighting
good.
In.
It was good.
And I was putting together real estate deals, jealous as could be.
You called out. I was like, "You want to come fishing?" And you're like, "I can't. I gotta sell houses.
I gotta sell houses. Gotta feed that baby." Speaking of selling stuff, Thorpe Creative, call me. I'll sell you a T-shirt and a hat and all that kind of fun stuff. CT Custom Lures, guy Cody here in town makes custom flies. Really sick stuff he's putting out there. So
yeah, some really cool
good
creative stuff.
And then speaking of real estate, KBT Realty with Keller Williams. That's a group I work with. And yeah, man, we're having fun, dude. Selling, putting some deals together, helping people buy themselves homes. And
heck yeah,
yeah, it's pretty fun.
And that offer still stands. First person to buy a house with Billy from the show gets a free fishing trip.
Free trip
from Billy. He's gonna pay for it.
Perfect. You got to buy a big house though.
Real big house.
Yeah, it's like a 300,000 plus house, and I will buy your trip. Let's see who's jumping on real quick before we bring our audience on, or not our audience, our guests on. So we got Jonathan. What's up, guys? Thank you so much. Mark Maynard, thanks for watching. Let us know where you're watching from. Jonathan Matthews says, Judson, stop playing around and come down to Florida.
I'm hoping to get down there here soon. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Dude, if it's warm in Florida right now, I might be down there this afternoon. Or, well, tonight. Tomorrow. Whatever.
Afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon.
You missed this afternoon.
Whatever next afternoon is, I'm going to be down there. So, cool. Let's go ahead and bring on our guests right now. I'm going to bring them both on at the same time. Here we go. What's up, Caleb? So, Caleb on
hey, how's it going?
On my left, and then Taylor there in the camouflage hoodie with the Down South Lure hat. So, welcome, guys. Welcome to Eastern Current. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Thanks for having us.
Go take it away.
It's gonna be a good time.
I don't know what else to say. Wait.
I get so nervous on the Skype because there's like this slight delay. I'm always afraid I'm going to interrupt somebody. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. We're excited to have you on here, and we've never done this many people on Skype, you guys. So hopefully it all flows real well. But if not, give us a second. We'll be jumping right back on.
Hopefully the tech nerd crap doesn't break. I'm gonna get fired.
You're going to be fired.
I'm going to get fired from my free job. So, guys, let's jump into this real quick. And, Caleb, we'll start with you. Give us a little bit of background, maybe how you got into the sport of fishing and, became a guide and a captain. And then once you're done, Taylor, you can just take off right on the tail end of that and give us your story as well.
Yeah, so I grew up freshwater fishing in my younger years, then moved on to saltwater as I got older. I didn't aspire to be a guide or a tournament fisherman or anything like that. And then just the competitive edge of it got to me, and I have an obsessive personality to where whenever I start something, I can't stop until I'm as good as I can possibly be at it. So one thing led to another, and captain's license and tournament fishing, and here we are now.
Right on. What do you like more, tournament fishing or guiding?
Oh, I hope no customers are listening, but I live for tournament fishing.
It's tournament fishing's fun. I'm not into it like y'all are. I do little small tournaments around here, but it's fun. That extra drive you don't even realize you have when you get out on the water is killer.
Money and trophies are great, but at the end of the day, you're just there to beat your friends so you can talk about it the next day.
Oh yeah. All right. So how about you? How'd you get into it all?
Like most people, grew up, my dad fishing, and would go with him and kind of took what he taught me and kind of expanded it and expanded my knowledge and everything on that sort. And then, we started tournament fishing. I did a couple local little tournaments and was like, man, this is pretty fun. So went from the local tournaments to a little bigger tournament trails. And, won a few here and there, got top 5. Actually, it took us a while to win, actually get a first place. But we got a couple top 5s and second places and stuff like that. And then finally got us a W, I think 2 years ago. We've had a couple since then, but tournament fishing's fun. I mean, that's just like Caleb said, you're there to beat your buddies. That's the main thing. You want to beat your buddies so you can smack talk to them. But
that's about it. And have you guys fished a bunch of tournaments like against each other or with each other?
We fished a couple together, and then we've actually fished against each other quite a bit. So he's not my tournament partner normally unless I need somebody. And my tournament partner that I fish with all the time, Actually, whenever I can't fish, he always calls Caleb to fish with him. So he's
Okay.
We've had a bit of a love triangle for the past couple of years down here.
Oh, that's always dangerous, man. Those love triangles, they'll bite you in the butt eventually. That's awesome, though. Yeah, it's always something I wanted to get more into. I think I'm going to try to fish this little bit of we've got a winter series here, and I'm going to try to jump into it and maybe do a little bit more in the summer. But I'm always like, every summer, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get into it, and then I start booking trips, and I forget to put it down on the calendar, and then it kind of rolls past. But yeah, super fun, super fun. So y'all do a lot of trout fishing as well, not just redfish. And Texas is pretty famous for big trout. And as we were saying pre-show, that y'all live kind of near some of the best trout fishing maybe the Texas coast has.
Yes, we definitely have one of my favorite fisheries on the Gulf Coast right here down the road from Taylor and I. There's another area further south that kind of rivals it, but we've seen more success up here from what I've seen. I've been a big trout guy for the better part of the decade, and it's what I lived for. But we've moved on to more of the redfish tournaments just for a financial standpoint.
Gotcha.
So those big redfish pay better. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm doing.
Is it because they're larger tournaments, more people fish in those redfish tournaments, or just better payouts, better sponsors?
As a whole, you can count on having more boats in a redfish tournament.
Okay.
Most of the better redfish tournaments have been around a long time, so yes, they have sponsorships and whatnot to help them pay better. I don't know why, but it doesn't seem like a trout tournament holds up over the years like a redfish tournament does.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, we have multiple tournaments that are paying $20,000 or better down here, and I can think of 2 or 3 trout tournaments that can even come close to that.
Yeah. $20,000's a good paycheck. That's a real good paycheck.
For sure.
So let's talk a little bit, Caleb, about it before we can jump into it, because I like people. We usually have a good number of people watching right off the bat. Just your guide business and kind of how that started and how people can get a hold of you if they want to come down there and fish, and just a little bit of that story.
Okay, so I'm Captain Caleb McCumber on Facebook, CABT_Caleb McCumber on Instagram. My website is captcaleb.com. That's captaincaleb.com. We drift, we wade. We'll do just about anything you want to do.
Right on. Well, I might have to slide down there and do a little bit of fishing with you. I really want to come do some trout fishing and whatnot in Texas. But
I think that's where you got to go catch those 30 plus.
I know it might be where I've got to go to do it.
So if anybody's watching the show and you haven't caught a dirty 30 to win the mug, I don't have one. Actually, I got like a different pattern here tonight, but maybe just go book a trip in Texas and go down there.
Might be what you have to do.
I'm gonna book a $1,000 trip so I can win a $25 mug.
How many 30-inch trout get caught down there on a weekly basis? Is that a weekly thing? It's a weekly thing.
You know, I would say true 30s in our area, maybe 1 or 2 a week over the whole Gulf Coast. I don't know, 4 or 5. There's so many guys that are very, very, very good at fishing, and you're never going to hear anything about what they did or what they caught. That's a moving target to even
try to pin down.
Try to guess. To be honest with you.
Yeah, that's still strong numbers though. I mean, I think I've heard of maybe 3 or 4 30-inch trout caught so far, since midsummer till now. But it's like you said, I feel like there's a lot of people that maybe kind of keep it under wraps and it doesn't hit social media and whatnot. But all right, so enough about trout. Well, let's kind of jump into this red fishing there. And so one thing that I've always heard about, and the only place I've ever fished in Texas is Galveston Bay, and it was definitely shallow, but you see all these different styles of boats down there, and I've just heard of how shallow everything is down there, and getting around and whatnot can be a little difficult. But how does that play into the fishing and the navigating and all that down there?
Well, boat selection is going to be a big deal. The majority of us run cat style boats down here, to where most of our areas we're going to have to cross bigger water to get to where we're going. So the flat bottoms, they'll beat you up a little bit. The cat will keep us skinny, but eat the chop pretty well also.
Right on. Are you so you're running a cat? Are you running tower boats for the most part too? Most people run with a tower if they're doing a little more red fishing.
I run a mid tower. There's a lot of tower boats out there. To be dead honest with you, I don't think you need one. I have mine mostly because we go to Louisiana and fish, and the elevation helps you a lot more in Louisiana than it does here.
Yeah.
But the tower boats, they're and maybe down south where the water's real clear, they're good. But in the particular area that Taylor and I live in, we're looking mostly at, mud clouds in the water, pushes,
wakes, pushing, stuff like
Gotcha.
that.
So it's not as much sight fishing, actually seeing that fish in the water and casting. It's kind of looking at those nuances and reading those.
75% of the year, yes, that's about how it is. You're not being able to actually physically see the fish. You're just pushing it, or you're throwing at wakes that are pushing. You're throwing at a school that's pushing a big wake. But this time of year, the water starts clearing up real good around our area, and you can actually do a little bit of sight casting and see these fish 100%. I mean, you're actually sight casting like you would in Louisiana or down in South Texas. So this time of year is great for that kind of stuff.
If you're going to go out and redfish, are you typically trying to? I know a lot of people wade for the trout. Is that the same deal for the redfish there, or are you fishing from the boat a little bit more? Or?
You can do both. I mean, you'll catch redfish when you're trout fishing, of course. When you're wading down the shoreline trying to catch trout, big trout, you're going to catch redfish too. But majority of mine and Caleb's fishing, when we're red fishing, we're fishing out of the boat.
Gotcha.
And unless it's so shallow we can't draft the boat there, and we kind of got to get out in that situation, then we will. But
in the tournaments there, can you get out of the boat and fish when you're fishing those redfish tournaments?
Some of them. Okay. There's a few that in the rules that you're not allowed to get out of the boat, and unless of course you're stuck or something like that. Yeah. But some of them.
They're pretty strict about that in a lot of the tournaments up here. Is like you cannot, even if you're stuck, your foot cannot come out of the boat and touch the bottom, or you're disqualified, which is crazy.
Wow.
But
it is pretty crazy.
But yeah, I just was always
that
wondering.
Would be a short day for me.
I was gonna say something, but I wasn't gonna say that, Caleb. I was gonna leave it alone.
You like bumping bottom? What do you see a lot of boats getting stuck down there? Like what is shallow water down there? Like what are you running through a lot of times?
I mean, you run through as much as 6 to 8 inches of water a lot.
Okay.
I mean, that's not what we're fishing in,
right,
of course, but I mean, you'll run through that quite a bit.
Now, is that like skipping a sandbar, or do you have like long stretches of 6 to 8 inches of water you got to run?
It depends. There's spots where you got to cross 200 yards of 6 to 8 inches of water.
Yeah.
And then there's other spots where you're dodging oyster reefs and stuff like that. I mean, those are Caleb's best friend.
Mine too. I like those things. The first day I took my new boat out, my new Maverick out. This was like a year ago, and I drilled a freaking oyster bar that I knew was there. I just wasn't paying attention. I was talking to my buddy that I was on the boat with, and just smashed an oyster bar right off. I mean, I'd broken it in, and it was like the first hour of actually running the boat around. And
that's the best time to do it.
It's the best time to do it. You're like, all right, the scratches are there. Let's go now. I can go fishing.
Exactly. The scratches are there. You ain't got to worry no more.
So what are y'all?
Taylor and I put a new.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You're good.
Taylor and I put a new prop on my boat when it was 10 hours old.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. Are you running a similar style boat, Taylor?
I have a baby cat. It's a 16-foot. It's a cat style boat. I mean, like you said, that's most of us run cat style boats down here.
Yeah.
Just because they draft shallow. I mean, you're drafting 9 to 10 inches of water, and then you can still cross over, pretty good chop
for sure,
and not get beat to death in it. So.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's not a more popular style boat up here. You see a few of them, but that it's a pretty productive. Would be a pretty productive boat up here as well. I mean, we've got those big tide swings, so you're not always dealing with that shallow water. But the red fishing is usually its best at that low incoming. And you're fishing and running around in some of that shallower stuff. So what are you looking for when you're going out and you may be fishing a new area or something where you haven't fished in a while? What are some of those things you're looking for when you're targeting redfish down there in Texas?
You want to go ahead, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, bait and water movement is the first two things that I think any of us are going to look for. If we haven't been somewhere in a while, the water quality. Taylor and I both will, as we're going in, we're paying attention to see if we're seeing any pushes from fish. Just any telltale sign. I don't know that there's a specific 1, 2, 3 program that we're working on. You're just looking for water movement, bait, and then signs of fish, and going from there. And if if the tide's high, we might push way further back in the marsh. If the tide's dumping out, we'll stay closer to where the bait's being pulled to.
Okay.
And then expand on the plan.
How important is depth there and what you are doing in fishing?
It all depends on where you're fishing and what you're doing. Like if we're fishing around a bunch of shell, which I'm a sucker for fishing oyster reefs.
Yep.
And a lot of times, you can't float over those oyster reefs if the tide's at a lower level. So, of course, those kind of spots I like to hit on a higher tide so I can float across of them.
Okay.
And those redfish hang out on those. I'm sure they're the same way there. I mean, hang out on shell and stuff like that. So
definitely. Yeah, it seems like, you can catch redfish at all tides here, but that sight fishing for us, I'd say 90% of it with how big our tide swings are. It's that first, that it's the 2 hours around dead low tide. So you're getting that water that's dropping out off the grass edge, and you got more of a mud edge, and you've got the oyster bars exposed. And once it gets high, it just gets so hard to sight fish. You're really just having to, work top waters and spoons and stuff in deeper water that's going to attract the fish a little bit more. But I didn't know if most of your fish you're targeting in there are going to be in like, an 8 to 12 inch deal, or you can catch them in deeper water and whatnot. I'm sure it's similar to here.
Yeah. We're mainly fishing in what, a foot and a half of water, Caleb, somewhere around there. 2 foot.
That's when we can see them,
give or take.
When
we're actually able to see them push, push awake and stuff like that. And this time of year is, if you want to go red fishing in Texas, this is the time of year.
Gotcha.
It's just epic right now as far as everything. It's easy. You're looking for birds and you're looking for schools. There's schools everywhere right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You get a lot of those fish tailing out. Like here, if you're going to find tailing redfish, it's typically on a flood tide in the grass. But it seems like in Texas, a lot of those fish are tailing out on those flats and stuff way off the bank. Is that pretty common to see?
Well, sort of. They definitely do that, but this time of year, it's more they're pushing shrimp around.
Gotcha.
So they are on the bank. You'll find them right up against the bank in the grass, and especially this time of year with the tides like we have. We have pretty high tides this time of year until we get a couple fronts, and then it'll push all the water out. But right now it's higher tides, and those fish are right up against the grass.
Right on.
Pushing.
Are those shrimp kind of falling out and moving out into the bay? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. Yes.
Cool.
That is whenever the first few fronts, we get a first good northern front, the shrimp will start migrating from the marsh to the bays, from the bays to the Gulf. So.
Gotcha. What's a common day fishing out there? Like, what are you looking at numbers wise, and what can you expect on the water to see?
This time of year is as many as you want to catch, trout or redfish, to be honest with you.
That's cool.
I went out last Sunday by myself for 40 minutes, and I think I let as many trout go. There's 30, 40 fish in 40 minutes, and the red fishing can be the same way. This is November, December is the most magical time of the year in Texas to me, as far as just going and having a good time. This is when Dad gets invited, brother-in-law gets invited, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
The customers all head to the deer blinds for some reason, but we're having a great time out here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. Take it like he said Sunday. I think it was the Saturday before he went. Me and my usual tournament partner went, and it was just, schools of redfish everywhere. We fished from 7 a.m. to noon at the latest, and we caught 30, 35 redfish, and 90% of them we were sight casting too. So
that's awesome.
I had a quick question. You guys jumped in early and said you go down and fish in Louisiana. And so where else are you red fishing at? So you red fish in Louisiana, you're red fishing down in Texas. Is there any other locations that you kind of go to and fish as well?
The Louisiana and Texas are our main two haunts. We have some really quality tournaments in both of those places. So when we have the extra time to do it, we want to spend the time there. I just got back. I went to Houma, Cocodrie, and Venice a couple of weeks ago. And so we just kind of make that circle from eastern Louisiana to South Texas.
Okay, gotcha. And do you feel like the fishing is pretty similar? Because, a lot of our audience is watching from North Carolina. And so I always like to compare like different fisheries and different ways to fish act and depth, location, water temperature, just to kind of give a little comparison. Because, I feel like fish are fish, but it's like kind of just that comparison from your guys' perspective. Like, is it the same? Is it the same strategies you're using, or are you kind of switching those up quite a bit from where you're fishing there in Texas to Louisiana and some other places?
So whenever I was in Venice, it was quite similar to Texas. It was grass flats, potholes, salt water. You had to be real quiet. Your cast had to be right. It could have just been the day that I was there, but there wasn't much room for error. I mean, if you push on the trolling motor a little bit too hard, that entire cove was dead. Up in Homa and Cocodrie, where it was more freshwater, the fish there are super aggressive, and honestly, a bad day there is a good day in Texas from my experience. So it depends on where you're at, and whether you're fishing that fresh brackish water or if you're down on the coast.
What about you, Taylor?
To touch on what Caleb just said, I would say Louisiana has got better red fishing than Texas, 75% of the year. This time of year, I would say we're equivalent to the numbers that you're going to catch in Louisiana. Now, trout fishing, I would say Texas has got that every day. So
yeah. If y'all could, here's a question I was wanting to ask. We kind of talked about this in the pre-show, but if you could only fish redfish or trout the rest of your life in Texas, you couldn't fish for the other one. What would y'all choose? There's so much to offer on both sides.
Well, being a guy that's been, I've been a trout lover all my life, but I would have to go redfish. They make my reels make loud noises, and what we call the redfish rednecks are a lot more fun to hang out with, no doubt.
The redfish is trout kind of like you're a little bit more of a like nose up in the air in Texas is. Gotcha. I'm kind of starting to sense that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a big head nod.
I spent the better part of our day putting a trout fire out.
That's awesome. I remember Chris Bush. He was like, "Man, I hate a redfish. I always think it's a big trout, and then I hate a redfish." And I love them both, man. I'm with y'all. The redfish I love the sight fishing aspect of a redfish. I love the finesse aspect of trout fishing. I think that there's a lot, and you learn so much from both fish and the techniques in which you fish for them.
We have a buddy that's a big trout guy, and he took it pretty hard whenever I left trout fishing, went to red fishing, and gave me a lot of grief about it. And the other day, he messed around and got into a lake with some schooling redfish in it, and he called me and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe how awesome that was. Now I see what your problem is and why you're not trout fishing anymore." So there you go.
It's addicting. What's y'all's best personal days on redfish in Texas?
Numbers wise, or what are we talking?
Numbers, but also just whatever sticks out in your head. Whether it might not be numbers, but it was just an awesome day. What was y'all's favorite days on redfish?
Man, it has to be the schooling days.
The schooling days.
It has to be the days where Taylor and I we fished together to where there's schools of 50 to 100 fish in front of us, in every direction you look there's a wake, and you still have to make a good cast on it, but when you make that cast you get rewarded. Yeah. And if you make that cast and Taylor doesn't, then you get to hammer him about it, and vice versa. So there's a lot of fun to it. Now I've had days with Taylor's partner Robert where we went out and fished for an hour, and each of us had a slot over 10 pounds. So, I don't know which one to call our best day, but I think it's just those days where there's school after school, and it's just a constant day of catching. And frankly, I don't care if they're all 5-pounders, as long as I'm entertained and we have a good time.
Right on. Now, here's a question that kind of I'm thinking of there is, to catch a slot redfish that's 10 pounds, is that mostly because you're catching the crap out of the redfish and you're just kind of culling through them, or is there an art to, finding that 10-pound slot redfish?
They're not everywhere on the Texas coast. You'll catch, so slot limit here is 20 to 28.
Okay.
Now, not everywhere on Texas you're going to catch a 27 7/8 fish that's going to be 10 pounds. A lot of times in your bays and in your lakes and stuff, that 27 7/8 fish might only weigh 7.5 to 8.5 pounds, give or take. So to catch a 10-pounder, there's very few areas that actually have those quality of fish there, that have the backs and the stomachs, and it's all about what they're eating.
Yeah.
I mean, we've noticed kind of here that, I mean, I've noticed, I'm sure Caleb can say the same, that the fish here that are eating shad are definitely your bigger, your fatter fish than the fish, say, that there's more shrimp or crab or something like that. So we kind of look for shad whenever we're looking for these tournament, big, fat, heavy shoulder tournament redfish. We're looking for shad in numbers to find these redfish that are there.
So when you say shad, are you talking about menhaden, like pogies, bunker? Is that what y'all calling shad? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, there's so many names for them, so you just never know.
Yeah, there is. They're all every state basically they call them something different.
Yeah, up here it's pogies. That's the big name for them, or menhaden sometimes. But you get bunker and fatbacks. There's so many names. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, a 10-pound slot redfish here is pretty unheard of. We've got our slot's 17 to 27, so you don't get that. You're missing an inch. But I mean, there's definitely some 8.5, 9 pound. And I'm sure there's been 10-pound slot redfish caught here. We're close to it, but I don't think I've ever caught one. That's for sure. But that's a nice fish there. And let's hear. I heard a rumor about Taylor. You had a pretty big stringer one day, and let's hear that story in the tournament.
Yeah,
maybe a record stringer.
Yeah. So me and my tournament partner, we actually hold I guess you want to say, Texas record as far as 2 redfish weighed in a tournament, and for those 2 redfish was 19 pounds and 23 ounces. Or I'm sorry, 19.23 is what the pound, not ounces. So it was a pretty epic day, I'd say. The actual big fish that I caught was 9.8, and my tournament partner, he caught the other one that was 9.3. Now I'll tell you a little story on the 9.8. It was a pretty cool little, I guess you want to kind of say, side casting experience. All I had was a topwater in my hand, and that's what we've been throwing all morning, catching fish on a topwater. And we're in this little, I guess you want to say, bayou. It's probably 20 yards wide, maybe 30 yards wide, and the whole bayou is shallow. It's a real shallow bayou. The deepest it is about 2 foot, maybe 1.5, 2 foot. So I see this fish wake off, and he starts pushing. And I told my tournament partner, I said, "Hey, watch this. I'm about to catch that fish." And he's like, "Yeah, bull crap, whatever." So I go and I sling that topwater, and I land it 10 feet in front of that fish, just a perfect cast. And I twitch it twice, and that fish, that wake disappears, like it's just gone. And he's like, "Oh man, he ain't gonna catch it." So he goes to wind up and throw at it, and right at the time he's going to throw at it, that fish comes up from underneath, that topwater and just crushes it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm fighting, and I'm like, he's oversized. He's too big. I can already tell by the way he's pulling drag, hey, this fish is too big. I get him by the boat, and we go to net him, and it's actually a 9-pound, 8-ounce fish that is only 27.25 inches. I mean, he's 3/4 of an inch, well within 28.
How many times did you double check that? I feel like I measured that wrong or something like that.
We checked the weight on that fish multiple times because we did not believe that, that fish. We even took it out. Like, we went, after we caught the second fish, we took them both out again, weighed them again, and just kind of double checked on bogus just to see what it weighed, because we didn't believe it. We were just, put it this way, that tournament, the weigh-in was at 4 o'clock, 3 to 4. And we were done fishing at 10 o'clock that day and heading to the boat ramp.
That's awesome. You're like, if somebody beats us, they earned it.
Yeah, if somebody beats that, that's basically what we said.
Yeah.
We've been beaten many times with 17 pounds. Like, we brought in 17 pounds, and we're like, we should have this, beat. Because the usual tournament here, if you have 17 plus, you're doing really good. Yeah. I mean, that's a solid first to third place. So with 1923, I said, if somebody brings in heavier than that, I'll tip my cap to him, and hey, good job.
For sure. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's we're getting some questions about tackle. I think it's a good time to kind of jump into talking about what y'all use, as well as like presentation when you're sight fishing or fishing to pushing fish, or mudding fish. And so let's start with presentation. Baits aside, like you're out there, you're either sight fishing or you're looking for waking fish or mudding fish. What's y'all's presentation on those fish? Or I know that's kind of a broad question, but kind of break that down a little bit.
Hey, if my phone dies, I'll call or I'll get back in. My phone's pretty low on battery, so
okay. If you want to slide and just grab a charger while we're live now, you can. Do
yeah,
that.
I'll do that real quick.
Okay,
yeah, cool. Man, go for it. Go ahead, Caleb. Jump into there.
So when we're chasing fish that we can see side casting, 9 times out of 10, we're throwing a jig head with a plastic on it. Taylor will throw it in front of him, and he kind of has a twitch thing that he does. Myself, I like to throw it in front of him, and then I'll bump it once or twice, and then usually I just retrieve it back in, so that to me the fish feels like it scared something, and it'll get that reaction out of it more than bouncing it around on bottom. We don't sight cast much with topwaters unless we're just goofing around having fun. It's almost always a jig head in a plastic situation.
Okay. Is there a certain weight jig head you prefer, or does that really just depend on the depth you're fishing?
We throw quarters most of the time. I have here, that's a naughty hooker that is down here. We like it. It's got a sideways eye in it rather than most.
Yeah.
But what this does is it I'm trying to find my camera here. It lets the bait swim true. Hey, there we go. The quarter, we like that because we can really throw it. If the fish are moving really fast, we'll move up to a 3/8 or sometimes even an ounce. The 8th and the 16th, they don't really have a place in the tackle box for what we're doing. A quarter is going to be 90% of the time.
You want to be able to get that distance and quickly. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Right on. Is there a certain soft plastic you prefer, a certain color combination you prefer when sight fishing?
I'm a golden black guy.
Nice.
I throw golden black almost all the time. This is a 3-inch DOA Cal shad. This is my favorite lure that I own. This color, this shape, everything. Then we have the down south lure in the red shad, and there's some other colors. Taylor throws a lot of down south. I'll throw them too. They have a smaller tail, so you're gonna get a lot of action, a lot of vibration out of them, versus the DOA that has a bigger, more methodical move water tail. It seems like when the fish are more skittish and not really liking a lot going on around them, that smaller tail will get bit more than the bigger tail that seems to be bothering them, and then vice versa. If I'm in dirtier water, I want a bigger tail that's putting off more vibrations and bringing them to it.
Right on. So how do you feel matching the hatch? Does that feel like something that really needs to happen with redfish? Does that pay off, or more so just getting something in front of them and moving it? Like if they're eating crabs, throwing something that resembles that color, or shrimp, that shape.
Well, I was once told that there's no substitute for putting it in front of their face. But yeah, if they're eating smaller stuff, I like to throw smaller stuff. If they're eating bigger stuff, I like to throw bigger stuff. Whenever they're really, really keen on shrimp, I feel like a rat tail is a better idea than a swim bait, just because that rat tail kind of has that twitchy poppy action that a shrimp fleeing would versus the paddle tail. So I've been in situations where there's 30, 40 redfish in front of us for 3 days and couldn't catch on one of them because we didn't have a lure small enough to do it. And I was fishing with a guy named Scott Knoll, who's a fly guide, and he was tying flies and throwing at them, but the fish were just so small they wouldn't touch anything we threw at them.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's 90% of the time just getting it in front of their face and moving it, letting them feel like they found that bait as opposed to really forcing it on them. But yeah, there's times here too. It's like it's crazy how tough it can be to get them to eat stuff when they're so keyed in on a certain bait, certain size, and you don't have it. But all right. So rod, are you one of those guys that really puts a lot into your rod when red fishing, or you kind of all across the board on that?
To me, a red fishing rod isn't quite as important as a trout fishing rod. What's important to me is that it's got a lot of backbone. I can jerk a fish out of cover. I can get him to the boat quickly. And when you're tournament fishing, you don't want to fight that fish and play him out for 10 minutes. You want to get him in the boat for multiple reasons. A, the less tired he is, the more likely he is to survive everything we fish in the live weigh-in. B, usually when you caught that fish, there's a couple more with him, so you want to get him in quick, get him unhooked, and get that lure back out there at him. So I would say a good stout rod but still has enough tip action that I can be accurate with my cast at the same time.
Are you throwing mostly spinning rods or bait casters or a combination of both?
When we're sight casting or blind fishing with top waters or plastic, I'm always throwing a bait caster.
Okay.
The only time, but I absolutely will not throw a popping cork with anything but a spinner.
Okay.
And that's mostly just because I'm lazy and it's easy to use.
Right on. Yeah, that's something that hasn't made its way up here quite as much as the bait caster, but a lot of the guys I see in Louisiana, as well as when I fished over in Texas, are throwing the bait casters. And I like a bait caster as well, but I throw a spinning rod, I'd say, a lot more of the time. But that bait caster, you can be so accurate, you can stop it. You know, you've got a lot more you can do with it. So, what size reels are you usually on a spinning rod? What size reels are you using for redfish?
25 and 3500s or 3000s, really 2500s and 3000s.
Okay,
that's more than enough.
What's your braid and leader setup?
Leader, we don't even know what that is down here, but anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds, Suffolk 832 is what I prefer.
Okay.
I know Taylor uses a little bit different than I do, but 50 pound is where we both end up at.
Right on. So you're saying y'all got pretty dirty water. Taylor, are you back on now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Gotcha. Yep, we got you.
Yeah, we got you, man.
I was going to touch on that. I got so I throw 50 pound majority of the time. I actually just recently started throwing a little bit of 65 too, just like Caleb said, to get the fish in as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So that's like he said, you're trying to get it as quick as possible to the boat so you can get it in that live well. So I feel like that 65 just helps out a little bit. So.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. That's something that you never really hear of. I mean, people will fish straight braid, but jumping up to 50, 65 pound, that's pretty cool. I've never done it. I'll have to try it, especially in that.
Well, our drags are at 0 is our deal too, though.
Yeah. Now, are you ever fishing anything with treble hooks besides the top water for redfish?
Crankbaits.
Well, we use some wake baits. Yeah.
You use some wake baits and crankbaits. Are you fishing the drag that heavy when you're throwing treble hooks as well too, or are you lightening it up a little bit?
A little lighter on that side because you're going to straighten out some treble hooks.
Yeah.
Now we do too. I don't know if Caleb's touched on this, but we fish a little bit of deeper structure too, as far as jetties and rivers like that. And throw crankbaits a lot too.
Okay.
That's I know it's one of my favorite things, and I think Caleb, he likes that kind of stuff too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So break that down for me, because I've never thrown. I mean, I've heard of throwing square bills and stuff for redfish shallower, but I've never fished crankbaits in deeper water. You about to tip over in there?
Yeah. I knocked it over.
That chair's slippery. Yeah, we throw a lot of square bills off of structure, whether it be timber, rocks, jetties, anything like that. We use them quite a bit. We use rattle traps. Really, I don't think there's a wrong way to fish for a redfish. He's a big, mean bass that lives in the salt water. So if they sell it at the store, he'll probably eat it.
Yeah.
Rubber frogs. The other day, I had a fuzzy little mouse that somebody brought on my boat. I was throwing the mouse at just to see what would happen.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's an aggressive creature.
When you're fishing, go ahead.
When they're feeding, I'm sorry. When they're feeding, they're aggressive. There's videos of people catching on like jalapenos and stuff like that on the hook when they're chilled up and eating. I actually have a video, I think, on my Instagram. I actually went with the owner of Down South Lures last year, and it happened to be a pretty good epic day where we were catching a bunch of schools of redfish, trying out some new baits that he came out with, and the coolest part of the day was, hey, let's try to catch a redfish on a dollar bill. So we hooked a dollar bill on a hook on a jig head and threw it out there in a school of redfish, and I actually ended up catching a redfish on a dollar bill.
That's awesome. You should have done it with $100 bill.
No, I'm more out of there. I mean, unless you want to send me $100, and I'll try it.
Yeah, I might have to do it if I win a lottery or something like that.
The dollar bill is still cheaper than using gulp too.
That's true. That's a good way to look at it. It's cheaper than using a lot of baits. Now I'm interested in you were saying you throw crankbaits around the jetties. Are y'all's jetties relatively shallow where you're fishing a square bill, or are you fishing something that dives a little bit deeper?
Our jetties are fairly deep. I mean, we got jetties that are the channel side of the jetties is 30 to 40 foot deep, 50 foot deep. Now there's even Porter Connor jetties down, is 80 foot deep, Caleb?
there's a 128-foot hole at the Port O'Connor jetty.
Yeah. So we're fishing the rocks. You want that crankbait to touch those rocks. You want it to bounce off those rocks, just like your bass fishing.
Okay.
And same thing whenever we're fishing timber. Like we can fish a lot of the rivers around here, and it's the same way. You're fishing the drop-offs where there's a bunch of timber, and not necessarily timber growing in the river. We're talking like log jams where there's a bunch of logs that floated down the river that are, in a pile, and you're fishing those. And the same thing, you want that square bill or you want that crankbait to touch those. If you're not getting in those trees, you're not going to catch the fish. So
that's cool. It's just crazy when you talk to people from other states. Like that's just so different than any way I've ever caught redfish here. It's real cool. Log fishing around log jams in a river. Well, yeah, we went over tackle. Billy, you got any questions? We've got through tackle. We talked about the boats and whatnot.
Yeah, man, I just think it was pretty interesting that Caleb, you were talking about redfish being similar to bass fishing. I haven't really heard that, man. Can you dive a little bit in there and compare? Because it sounds like you started out with or freshwater fishing and then red fishing. So can you dive a little deeper in that, or was it just kind of like, well, it just is similar? Kind of a weird question.
No,
but...
sure. I mean, you're dealing with a fish that's very aggressive. You use a lot of the same lures. You use the spinner baits, crankbait. The only thing I haven't tried yet is a jitterbug. I've always thought that'd be a really cool redfish bait. But cool. You're looking for something that's going to move water and make commotion and trigger them to get angry and eat it. Which is, I grew up fishing Florida hybrid bass, and another guy that fishes tournament with us named David, he's a pretty wicked bass fisherman, and he'll bring his bass box straight to the bay and do well with it. So it's the correlations are there every time you go fishing for them. And on top of that, you'll see redfish hanging on structure a lot more than you would a trout. And I'm not talking about oyster structure. I'm talking about a duck blind or a log in the middle of the water. We had a tournament last year where first fish of the day, we broke it off on a popping cork, and I watched that cork go from log to log to log all around that cove. And every time it got to a piece of wood sticking out of the water, that cork would sit there and sit by it until we got closer, and then it'd move to the next one. So
wow, that's cool.
If you know how to bass fish, it's not going to take much to know how to redfish.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, you just built my confidence like 80%. Because I feel like I'm a pretty decent bass fisherman, but when I come to red fishing, I'm like, golly, you suck. But now that you said that, I'm taking my bass tackle box out, man. Forget all this saltwater stuff.
I think you should.
Let me get my frog out there.
I think you should. All right, so we talked about tackle a little bit, but if y'all both had to choose one bait to throw to redfish for the rest of your life, what would it be? Or one confidence bait. What was the one thing, if you could only take one thing out there, what would you throw?
Go ahead, Caleb.
A gulp. Popping cork and a gulp.
Popping cork and a gulp.
There's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing fun about it. But 90% of the time, if they're not going to eat anything else, they will eat that popping cork and a gulp.
Yep. On
tournament day, that's what I have. If I can't see them, that popping cork and a gulp is getting worked all day long. And Taylor will tell you that nobody complains about it as much as I do. But I'm throwing it all day long.
Oh, the old poppy. The old popping
All right,
cork.
Taylor, what's your way in here, man? What are you going with?
So, one lure for the rest of my life to throw. I would honestly have to.
It's a really shitty question.
It really is, because I mean, do you want to catch numbers or do you want to catch quality fish?
Right.
Or do you want to have fun?
Exactly. Like Caleb said, if you want to catch numbers and you want to actually catch fish, every single time, yeah, I would throw a popping cork and gulp. But my favorite thing, absolutely, to throw is definitely topwater. And I'll be more specific. I like to throw a skitter walk. Rapala skitter walk is definitely my favorite topwater to throw, especially at redfish.
What 808 color?
That right there.
Here.
Well, hold on a second. Let's see. Let me pull it up here. There you go.
There he is.
That's what you're looking for.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the one. So.
A golden black skitter walk.
I
think it's a SW8.
All up and down the coast.
That's it.
That's a great one.
That's the one.
Oh man!
I mean,
so
for me, there's just nothing more exciting about a fish blowing up and being able to see it blow up on a lure than anything. So.
For sure.
Yeah, man, that's cool. So Judd, and in all fairness, man, you have to answer the same question.
Oh, in all fairness,
One
I
bait.
asked it, and now I'm trying to think of it for myself. And it is a tricky one to think of because I would probably have to go with the topwater as well if I could only, because you can still sight fish with it. It's a good search bait. You know, it covers water. It's a little more interesting than a popping cork, but I'd probably go with a topwater as well.
I'm gonna go with the dollar bill now that I've learned that. I'm going with the dollar bill.
Nice thing about dollar bills, you can fold it in all different shapes. The beetle spins. A spinner bait's another good one though too, man. The spinner bait is or maybe a chatterbait. I'm gonna say a chatterbait just to change it up. I'd throw a chatterbait.
Do y'all throw a lot of chatterbaits up there?
They do okay up here. I don't throw them quite as much. I don't do most of my red fishing here is I'm sight fishing that 2 hours around the low tide, so I'm usually just throwing a jig. And if I am fishing higher tides, I'm fishing either like a gold spoon or a spinner bait or a chatterbait, something that's got some vibration more so than just like a jig head. But in Louisiana, man, that chatterbait is silly. It's, I mean, and when I went over there, or when I was down there guiding, typically like I'm doing mostly fly fishing there, but our confidence bait or our search bait, you know, I'd have one guy, we're sight fishing off the bow of the fly rod. And then I'd have one guy standing on my cooler seat on my skiff, throwing a popping cork as far out off the bank as he can and just chugging it back in. And last year, I just couldn't get him on the popping cork. And so we started throwing that chatterbait and the spinner bait off. And that chatterbait, man, would just outfished everything. And it just, even a small chatterbait, those big fish were eating it in 5-6 feet of water. We were catching everything. We were catching sheep's head. Do what?
I said I've tried it over here a few times, the chatterbait thing, and it works good.
It does, yeah.
It does work.
The only problem with it is you can't fish it quite as fast as you could a top water or a spinnerbait. It rides up so quick in that water column.
Correct.
But
Robert and I went to Central Louisiana a couple of months ago. I was throwing a jig head with a plastic, popping cork, everything I can get my hands on. I would catch a 6-pounder, and Robert would cast right behind me with a spinnerbait and catch an 8.5. And it became almost comical. After an hour or two. That spinnerbait was just, the bigger ones were loving it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fun bite too. A lot of times it's like it doesn't feel like a bite. It feels like, you know, almost slack on that chatterbait. It's like they come in and surge from behind it and eat it, and you don't really feel it for a second. But cool. Well, do y'all want? We've got a few more minutes left. Do you think we got enough time to talk trout just a little bit?
Yeah, man. I mean, we talk trout. It'd be fun.
Well, break down y'all's, wherever you want to take it, y'all's kind of trout fishing, trout obsession. Let's just talk big gator trout, big Texas trout for 5 minutes, wherever y'all want to take the conversation. Giving y'all full reign.
So right now, the key to the game seems to be that we have these fronts coming in, and it's really cooling the water off and doing it quickly. Post front, right before the front gets there, you've got the barometer acting wacky, and they're going to eat. And then the key to the backside of that front seems to be a couple of days after, whenever the sun comes out and starts warming the shallow water back up, you'll get those big trout laying in singles and pairs, up in that shallow water closer to the grass line. Last year was a different situation than most of us have ever seen, to where the big trout were actually in schools of 8, 10, 20 fish versus, historically, being singles and pairs. But it's getting good. I've seen a 10.5 and a 9.5 in the past 7 days. So they're starting to do what they're supposed to.
So what do you think played into last year with those big trout schooling like that?
Some people are blaming it on the burn boats. Down here, we had a lot of big trout tournaments, and there were boats burning real close to the grass line almost daily. And we're thinking maybe those bigger fish just quit going up on that grass line and hanging out in, belly to chest deep water. And that's what made them school up in bigger groups. But really, I haven't had anything, scientifically that would explain it. When you go out and have a day where you have 20 fish over 25 inches, that's almost unheard of. Usually when you get done playing out a good bite, you've had 5 or 6 over 25 inches. So there's something going on, but I like it. Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. Now, do you feel like, and I hear this all the time, and I'm no expert trout fisherman by any means, but here people are like, oh, you might catch a big 25 plus inch trout with, schooling trout, but you're typically going to hit him by himself. Is that something that plays into the fishing down there? I mean, can you be sitting there catching 18, 20-inch trout and then pretty commonly catch a big fish in that, or are you usually finding it by themselves?
I think that whenever you catch when you're catching 18 to 20-inch trout and you catch a big ones because those smaller ones moved on and the bigger ones showed up.
Gotcha.
I think you can catch as many as you want that are upper slot fish, as long as that particular group is hanging in that area. I've found that, I'll be catching some smaller ones, and then some redfish will just start showing up for no reason. And you start catching 5, 6, 7 pound redfish. And then, when the trout do show up with that, they tend to be better fish.
Gotcha. That's cool. We had a question here. Daryl Holtz, is a redfish a trophy fish?
I have
I think you might be playing into Step Brothers quote.
I know a lot of lines from Step Brothers, but I'm not going to say any of them on your show.
That's all right. But yeah, I'd say it's a trophy fish. What were you going to say, though? I interrupted you.
I have a slot that is almost 12 pounds that I caught years ago with my dad, and I still have fond memories of it. To me, though, a trophy redfish, aside from one that gets you paid at a tournament, is a lot of really cool spots or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. What are y'all's biggest redfish on artificials?
48 inches.
48 inches.
Yeah,
it's a stud.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you. It's probably right there with Taylor. Taylor and I fish a lot of the same waters. We're catching the same sort of fish, so that they're definitely some big ones. So we take pictures of them and say, "Man, look at that thing," and I can't say that I've ever even measured one.
Yeah. Do you see those?
Oh, sorry. Bigger fish, like a lot of those bigger fish, like the big 40, 50, 40-inch fish. Mm-hmm. Those are mainly, we're catching those at the jetties, or in the surf, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So
you're not seeing them in the same areas in that shallow water like you do in Louisiana.
Right. Whenever we're throwing a crankbait looking for slot redfish, and you happen across a big bull red that's 40 plus inches. So
yeah, that's cool. That's super cool. Well, guys, we usually you want to take it away with the closing?
Yeah, man. No, I mean, first of all, just appreciate you guys being on the show and coming on and sharing a little Texas red fishing with us. I know it's a little different when you're talking to some guys that don't fish in the same waters or same area and trying to stir up that conversation, but we appreciate you sharing, what you can and from a distance. I think it's just so interesting, some of the correlations, and I get so captivated in just listening. I forget, like, I'm co-hosting the show, so I was like over here like, man, it's like thinking about redfish being like a bass. Like, it's all I've been thinking about for 10 minutes. Like, how can I go catch more redfish? But anyway, right. That's a whole different thing. So really appreciate you guys coming on the show, man. And just thank you so much for being on. And we'd love to bring you on again at a later time and maybe really dig into, some other trout fishing. I think we've, pre-show, we kind of really hit off on the trout fishing stuff. So we could definitely have you back on and talk about some, dirty 30s and doing stuff like that and trying to target those bigger trout. So man, appreciate it, guys. We really appreciate you coming on.
No, it was a great time, and catch us a little bit later in the year, and we'll be more into the trout fishing and have some stories for you. We'll tell you how we did it. We can't tell you where we did it, but we'll tell you how we did it. And Epstein didn't kill himself.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. That's been like my favorite thing of all time so far. Is like everything I see on the internet is just like Epstein didn't kill himself.
That was great.
I'm gonna have to have a mug that just
I was gonna
says
say,
that.
do you have any closing words? But I think that was it.
That was the closer, man. That was perfect.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Well, dude, we appreciate you guys and everybody watching. We really appreciate you watching and listening. If you're listening to our podcast or you're watching here on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, and if you haven't downloaded our podcast, go over to iTunes, wherever, download that, check it out, listen to it on your way to work or whatever, because we're a lot better to listen to than to look at. So that's pretty good.
Especially because I forgot my hat tonight.
No worries, dude. I don't know why you give yourself such a hard time about no hat, man.
Such an ugly hat, man.
We're just gonna get you a wig that you can just pop on there. So anyway, guys, we're going to give away this VB Fish Prints. Hold on. Somebody said what it was. Somebody in the chat. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see who was
what that style of print is called.
Yeah, not that I can read it.
Oh, here it is.
But...
Yotaku.
Yotaku? No, okay, I messed that one up bad.
Process of printing. I believe.
Anyway, how are we going to give this away? We're giving it away for likes, comments, shares. What are we doing?
I think we should just do it for comments.
Okay, let's go. Scroll through there.
Scrolling.
Pick a random one. Here we go.
Let's see here. Sydney Salibi.
Sydney, what's up? You just won. So what you want to do is make sure you send us your shipping information to our Facebook page right here. So just hit message, send that right over, or on our Instagram account, wherever you follow us on, and go check. Send us all your shipping stuff, and we'll ship it out to you.
Yep.
Awesome. Easy as that.
Super easy.
Show 22 right
Show
there.
22 done. Thanks again, guys, for coming on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And we will we'll see y'all next week. We've got actually another Texas guest, Meredith McCord. She travels all over.
Our first lady angler on the show.
First lady angler. She's a good friend, and she's traveled and fished all over the world. It's going to be kind of just a traveling and angling episode.
Yeah.
So
and I think in the winter months we're getting a little, like we've talked a lot about North Carolina fishing, and so we're trying to branch out a little bit to different places and learn different cultures of fishing and different strategies in different areas. So for the people who are watching or listening, don't give up so quick on just because it's not, and 90% of our audience is from North Carolina. So I think when you guys see redfish, you're like, I'm out. But I'd learned so much just off this show and listening to these guys bring that that Texas experience.
Yeah, there's so much to learn, that you can take from other places and apply here. So
I'm excited for our guest next week, man. She's gonna crush it.
It'll be fun. But thanks again, guys, awesome. And we'll see y'all next week.
That's it. We'll see you next week. Have a great night.
Bye.